Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so the subject for tonight is alignment and what relevance that has to Aikido. So I forgot to get a dictionary definition, so I will quickly look one up. But would anyone like to open up on that? What they think alignment means and what its relevance to Aikido is.
Alignment is the relative position in spaces of different parts of the same object or different objects.
Okay, so the dictionary definition that's immediately come up is pretty close to that. Arrangement in a straight line or in correct relative positions, a position of agreement or alliance. And that covers two aspects. The first to me is kind of looking at the physical component. And the second is maybe more about how you feel about something. You know, are your values aligned with it? Are your emotions aligned with it? Are your goals aligned with it? You know, that's a slightly different thing. So let's just tackle the physical component first. How important? Sorry, Paul.
The third piece, they were defining good alignment.
Right.
Bad alignment, they didn't talk about.
No, that's true. I would say that was non-alignment if it's bad alignment. So we could talk about the impact of not being aligned, not feeling aligned physically or on those other dimensions I talked about. Why do we want to be aligned in Aikido, and if so, why? This is a session where you do definitely have to participate. We've got no great expert to call on. You know, you guys are the ones that have to come up with the discussion. Okay, Linda.
I'll be no great expert.
Okay.
I'm good
We
at that.
can all do that together.
When we are aligned, either in the physical linear parts agreeing sense, or our intention and actions in agreement, we have more strength. We're more capable of affecting the change we want. If we're kind of you know, broken in some way, we don't have the same power to fulfill our intentions.
I really like that.
If I may be so bold, I will shut up. People tell me to. It's not that you increase your strength, you increase the utilization of the strength you already had for a better effect.
The effectiveness, yeah, good.
You maximize your potential to realize whatever strength stroke power you have. And that was the only thing I was going to question you on, which is what's your definition of strength?
Effectiveness. I like that word better. I think Paul's got a good point.
Yeah.
Because you can generate lots of strength in several directions, but it doesn't do much for you.
You also won't increase
or
your
be
strength.
active. Sorry, go ahead.
You also won't increase your strength by good alignment. You'll be just as strong, but using it effectively.
It's coherent.
Yeah, you're maximizing your potential for physical strength. But I think, are we happy to say that actually Aikido's got very little to do with physical strength, or are those here want to argue that physical strength is a key component? You do want to argue that. David,
no, I want to argue the opposite. I've often done Aikido when I've been very ill and very physically weak, and it still worked and it's still been effective.
Well said, Judith. But let's hear the other side of the coin from David.
Well, I don't disagree with what Judith said, but I think strength is important. I'm not saying it's more important. And I think if you were stronger and if you're stronger than somebody else and you worked as effectively and did exactly the same thing as them, you would be more powerful and be able to dominate them, I guess.
I'm going to question what your dominant definition of power is.
Well, or whatever you need to do. So, but if everything else is equal, then if you're stronger than somebody else, the chances are that your effectiveness of technique or effectiveness of your defense or whatever you wanted to say would be better, and you'll be more capable of taking any blows or receiving your kemi if you're stronger than somebody else. But I'm not saying I'm not saying you can't function without strength or without. You'll need some form of utilization of your muscles and your bones and everything else. But all things being equal, then probably being stronger is better than not being stronger.
So if we think about all the big names in Aikido, let's start with the Japanese to start with. I don't think any of them were giants. Most of them were probably not much more than 5'6". I'm sure there were exceptions to that, but generally they're much shorter than Westerners. And as they got older, they were probably performing at their peak. And you know, people like Toei and Osensei would go out to places like Hawaii where there were giants. Didn't seem to be a problem for them that they were able to move these guys pretty easily. So I have to say that I don't think physical strength plays any part at all in good Aikido.
It must, in the sense that without any physical strength, you'd lie on the ground, you couldn't do anything. So you really have to be careful when you're around me, because I'm picky.
Yeah.
You are being a little picky, but I take your point that if you're not capable of standing up or moving your arms, it might become a little difficult. But I mean, it's often said that women are much better at Aikido than men because they're just more gentle. So that would go against the idea that physical strength played a big part in the power that we're trying to tap into.
And it's all relative, isn't it? I mean, we're all minusculely insignificant on the universal scale, which is often referenced. And again, I don't really comprehend what that means, but
Well, I'm beginning to feel pretty minuscule, I have to say.
Quentin, on the physicality of it, when I feel really thrown, it feels like the physicality of that throw was exactly what it needed to be, and it feels like my own energy was pulled into and then guided out of that moment more effectively than I'm used to.
Yeah.
So clearly it's not physical strength in the what can I bench press, sense of physical strength. It's not brawn for its own sake that matters. Although, I've had people grab my wrist and felt relatively useless, if I let them clench, right? Or at least I have felt myself trying to counter their size with size, and I have at least a little to work with. But if I were 5'1" and 120 pounds, I don't know that, if I were Osensei, I would have to come up with something else. He clearly did.
Yeah.
Right. And so that something else is out there, is available, is not, it is fantastic without being fantastical.
Yeah.
Because we're not imagining that Osensei was really good at this.
Yeah. We
have any number of eyewitness reports from people we trust that this stuff worked.
Well, I think there are people around that we work with, we've had on these sessions. So I wouldn't say Mary Heine probably works on any realm of strength oh my goodness. Her first name's just gone from my head. Kimberly Richardson. I mean, physical strength is not where it's at. And you can work with someone like Yoshi Shibato, who I know a number of us will have experienced. And I mean, he's not the biggest guy, but I have absolutely no doubts that no matter how big a guy grabbed him, he would have a solution to that problem, and it wouldn't rely on physical strength. I would say that when feel that I've really been thrown, it never feels like it's physical strength. It's more like I'm floating and you're thinking, how the hell did that much power get generated when I didn't even feel it? Yeah, so that's my experience.
To the extent that that is happening physically, to the extent that there is a physical interaction that's conveying that and helping that happen, there is a physicality to it that is ineluctable. I don't think we can, I'm not sitting there and teleporting you away from me.
Absolutely. This is a mind, body, spirit art, depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
So I'm not denying that we need to be able to use our bodies and blend our bodies and minds with our partner. I'm just saying that I think as you advance, you certainly rely less and less on strength and understand that actually that's pretty ineffective.
To the extent that this started with integration, I think that the more connected we are within our own bodies, and just the more we move as one thing, we're as powerful as we actually always had the potential to be.
Yeah. So you're bringing us back to the concept that we're all
Yeah.
supposed to be discussing of alignment.
Yeah.
So we have to have our physical structure operating at its most capable.
Mhm.
Or what would you say that means? Where are we operating most effectively on a physical plane for you?
There's a sense where alignment with the center of the movement, you know, so that you are maintaining the center and taking their center away from them, is critical. There's a, you know, to the extent that you can be extended vertically, like along the axis mundi, and feel that you are anchored by that.
Right.
That feeling is a physical feeling. The axis mundi, one imagines, is imaginary.
Right.
But nevertheless, my body has aligned with this idea, and it is helping shape my physical movements and the experience.
Okay.
You know.
So
I know.
if we're describing someone's physical form that we think is effectively aligned, is there any uniformity in that, or does it depend on the circumstance?
Both.
Okay, yeah, I buy that, but I would say that generally speaking, for me, I want my head to be sitting squarely on my neck. I don't want it to be falling forward or back or to the side. I want my shoulders to be reasonably and spine to be relatively straight and aligned above my hips. And yeah, I'm willing to bend my legs, but not much else. I like my upper body to stay pretty vertical throughout.
Yeah.
I always think you're vulnerable as soon as you find yourself throwing your upper body forward. If you're attacked at that moment, it's very hard to be stable. Would that be a common experience for you all, or am I kind of?
Yeah, I think so. I think as a younger person, you want to practice having a fairly upright, relaxed stance.
Yeah.
The problem is, as you get older, you tend to lose that because of the physicalities in your body. But as you develop in Aikido and as you get older, you can compensate for that in different ways.
I agree, Andrew. But what I would say is, if you're trained in Aikido, the idea of actually that sort of gradual collapse probably happens much more slowly and to a much lesser degree, because you're used to operating effectively.
Yeah.
But David, you were nodding your head, and we kind of had this discussion a week or two. No, you weren't nodding your head? You were nodding your head. Okay, then you have to come on and justify your thoughts.
Well, I do, but Judith's got a hand up as well, so can we let Judith go first?
Judith, yeah, go on.
I was wanting to say, the way I was taught to be powerful in Aikido was not to use physical strength, to relax completely and extend ki. And that worked well. That was powerful. But in recent years, I've met people who can do similar things, who describe it differently. They make descriptions like they're using the fascia instead of using the muscles underneath. So I think there's different ways of describing it that all work.
I don't think that's hugely different to what you were taught. It's just a different language for how to access the same thing, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
David.
No, the thing I was gonna say, there's a question. I was talking to some Tai Chi teacher, and one of the things he was looking at, especially when, for example, when he's like doing a throw or moving forward, he would tend to allow his back to be in line with his. Say if his back leg was slanted, his upper body would also be that way as well. So you wouldn't be sort of breaking, you wouldn't be having your head and your spine upright with your back like this way. He would be more in that way. So the basically the power was going, there was like a straight line from the head through the spine, through the pelvis, through the leg, into the foot, into the ground. And there's a degree of there's less chance of that posture being broken if it was a direct point on top of the head, or there was something around that. And sometimes I wonder whether, looking at some people, their legs are maybe moving in such a way, but their body can be upright, and I just wonder whether that's actually entirely stable in some instances, and they're not getting the support of their legs on the ground in some instances. So it's slightly different, certainly from a Tai Chi point of view to Aikido, from that conversation.
But in what you described, there's still an aligned posture. It's like a seesaw where if the head went backwards, the foot went forward, so there was still a straight line. And also I think in my own training, there are times where there are movements I can make which I don't think are maximum power, but my body's more than capable of doing them. And sometimes when we're doing kokidosa, and someone lunges forward to push me over, I will deliberately go a long way back because I know they're going to overreach. And actually, I'm not out of control, but to reach me, they have to get out of control. And then it makes it very easy to throw them. So as a tactic, as long as I'm more aligned than they are, it's okay. I'm still in control of the situation.
Yeah. Well, that's not necessarily a question of alignment, though, at that point in time. It's a question of the tactic that you've got to utilize their deficiencies in terms of their movement. So, so it goes back to this question: what is alignment? And Paul made this comment about the correct relative positions, and obviously that changes quite a lot. And you mentioned Mary Heine-Sensei earlier on, and from a alignment point of view, looking at her posture, you would say that some of her things wouldn't look particularly good, but even though she's got an arch, she's got a rounded back, and she's got these other things going on, and but yet she had her head over her pelvis most of the time. The power that she was directing from the floor was amazing. So she has strength, or whatever you want to call this directed force. I guess it's some sort of force vector. And we talked about strength and how that works. So there's a making sure all its force is directed in a concentrated, integrated, focused manner. That's how you're going to get some power. And I haven't trained with Paul, but I can imagine Paul would have some challenges going on at the moment. But I'm sure his Aikido techniques and power are phenomenal. But would that be alignment, or would that be really good Aikido principles in the entirety, not one aspect of it?
Okay, so I'm going to come to you in just a second, Finn, but a couple of comments in relation to that. So Mary had polio when she was young, so she can't do anything about that, but she does the best she's got with what she's got, I would say. So being perfectly upright, I'm not saying that's what everybody can do. If you've got polio, then you've got polio. Or if you've got one leg or one arm, you work with what you've got. Yeah. But the other thing I would add to that is, if you're not necessarily aligned totally physically, maybe you're aligned with the situation. And so I described it as a tactic, but maybe I could use the word alignment for, this full understanding of the situation and knowing that if I go back and then that's going to work, and I'm still in sort of kind of a blend there. Finn, over to you.
Just a few thoughts popping together. The exercises that we do with you on a Tuesday, it seemed to me they're about aligning with the force of gravity, which is a very prevalent force to contend with, but we haven't really talked about what we're aligning with. So if we're with somebody else, then it's more a question of orientation. But I'm also still resonating with the thought earlier from congruence. So that's more about aligning with ourselves.
Okay, let's cover the gravity one, because I think that's a beautiful observation, and it's really kind of central to the way I teach, actually. Joe, I'll come to you in just a sec. Absolutely, you've got to be aligned with the forces of nature. That seems to be really fundamental to our practice. Trying to fight nature is you're bound to lose. So, and gravity perhaps being the one that affects us the most. Yes, that is why I the force of down trying to make sure that my body is aligned in a straight line. That is why I do it. Joe, over to you.
Yes, one thing that I have been working a lot recently with myself and with some friends and students, we have our body all divided. So I'm right-handed, so my right hand is better than my left hand. And my head, sometimes I'm thinking too much fast and then I don't connect to my body. So I think what I'm bringing with the alignment is also a connection from how do I connect my mind, my heart, my center. How do they have a dialogue between themselves? Because it's completely different. So I think it could be bring more balance, being aligned, more connection. And without that, it just kind of, if I'm talking like this, my head is on one side, it's low, it's over my head, my hand, and I completely lost all the alignment of my speech. And when I go back and connect this part, so I don't know, maybe alignment with connection, with integration, and something that's happening a lot frequently here.
So what you're saying is, you're highlighting a really important point. I mean, my physicality can be brilliant, but if my mind's not aligned with what my body's doing and what's going on in front of me or behind me or wherever it's going on, it ain't gonna work. So yeah, absolutely. But getting in sync with yourself, mind and body, that's just the start of the journey. Then there's all that other stuff that you have to align with as well.
Exactly.
Hugh, are you itching to say something? You look like you might be. Yay, nay? Okay.
Unmute. There we are. Unmute. Right.
Okay,
so I think Joe's point is a great one and was very much on my mind about being mentally aligned as well as physically aligned. Also, what I want to say, you may remember our little motto in our Cambridge dojo is escape Atemi technique. And when I was sort of trying to translate escape into, by which we mean move off the line of attack, I was looking to translate that word into Japanese, and it doesn't translate well into the word for escape. But the best translation in an Aikido context is taisabaki. So it's a focused body movement to move off the line of attack, and this ties back in with Paul's point about relativity. So in the first instance, as we can all focus on ourselves, but if you're under attack, you must understand the alignment of your opponent.
Absolutely. Well, you've very nicely taken us on to the next level, because having Jo sorted out herself, got her mind and body together, the next thing she's got to do is sort out what's going on in front of her and align with her partner, hasn't she? So what does that mean? What elements are there that we need to be aligned with? You've touched on one, Hugh.
Oh yeah, me. I mean, you have to pick up their intention. I mean, they're attacking, right?
Yeah. So okay, so you might call that the energy of the attack.
Yes.
But
exactly.
also there's the physicality, isn't there too? I mean, ideally, you kind of want to put yourself in their position, whatever that means. It's quite, for me, it depends on what technique is going to be the suitable one. Sometimes that means you're literally putting yourself by their side. When you're doing taisabaki, that's probably the case. You're going to put yourself right by their side. And in the techniques I do, I find that if I end up slightly behind them, it doesn't work. If I end up slightly in front of them, I feel vulnerable. I have to be right next to them. And if there's a gap between me and them, it doesn't work very well either. I have to come side to side like that. And then it works pretty well. So my alignment goes literally with their embodiment as well.
Yeah.
So I'm doing talking here. Is there anyone else want to say something here?
I was going to say you have to feel where your partner's balance is, and where their energy is flowing, and align yourself with that.
Okay, let's explore that you have to feel bit. So what senses are you using? Are you just looking at a physical component there, or does it go deeper than that for you, Andrew?
It goes deeper than that. You start by observing sort of what is going on, but you can actually feel the direction of the energy
Yeah.
that's coming towards you.
Yeah.
And use it or redirect it or whatever.
Yeah, so I was going to say you can, for me, at some point in the throw, their physical alignment is going to be lost.
Yeah.
But also their mental, it works just as well if you take the mental alignment as well. If you can disturb them, they become very easy to move. Molly, will you like to offer something?
Yes,
I
definitely.
hope so.
I just was catching up and listening. You know, my physicality is way different. Paul and I have kind of similar expressions because our movements are very different than you typically abled people who can move around. So for me, it's all balance taking. I don't use strength. It makes no sense to me. And if someone is attacking and, you know, let's say hypothetically we are doing a specific technique, if they come in a way to block that technique, I don't do that technique. I do what shows up that takes their balance, because if I don't get their balance, then I'm theirs. I have to get their balance. And I have the experience of getting their balance before they ever get to me. That there is an extension, and I'm not coming from the front. You know, when you see the photographs of all the Japanese warriors that were carved and things like that, I have this sense of that all behind me, that I've got all that collected. And so my energy is really big. And there's a collection of the person before they ever get to me. And the balance, it can be just the slightest spiral in my motion, and they're gone. So strength is not the issue for me. Yeah, I'm strong and, you know, I could muscle, but when you're on wheels, then I'm you know, I'm either flipped over or flipped out, or I'm rolling around all over the place. Yeah. And so for me, it really is just this holding this huge space of energy and feeling it as it's moving towards me from the side, from the back. I mean, where the hairs go up on the back of my neck, I can feel what's coming, but it's like really extending my field hugely to encompass what's coming.
Yeah. So yeah, I would want to make a very strong delineation between strength and power, both of which we would have to define to satisfy Paul, which is fine, but I associate strength with to me it links to physical, and I'm not a big bloke, so that's not going to work for me. All too often it's not going to work for me. But power, any of us can access power. No matter what our physicality, we can all access immense power if we practice the principles, if we align with the principles of Aikido. Yeah, I think if we don't follow the principles, it's really hard to do good Aikido.
And a seated alignment has a different feel to a standing alignment. I can imagine. It's just different, and you know, upright posture. Wow, you know, there was a time in my life when I don't know how to do it now. I would move through the world. I had just the slightest little tilt in just a slight little tilt in my head. And even doing that feels really odd to me. It's gotten so much where I feel like I have a sky hook, you know, that I'm being drawn up and out into space, as well as being firmly rooted to the earth. Yeah. But I'm I am, you know, there's a lot of things that move internally in me, but I'm really just moving my partner. I'm not getting off the line in the classical sense.
No, but you are relaxed and you are centered and you are incredibly aware and extending ki, and you are keeping weight underside or working with gravity or having a light posture, any of those phrases you want to use. So you're very much using all the principles to be able to achieve the same effect from a different position.
Yeah. Kazushi. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think there are a couple other pieces. I've recently been experimenting. I haven't the faintest idea where I'm going with it, about the transition from hard power to soft power, not against anybody, but in my body. I'm learning things about the hard power that has been helping my Parkinson's. I don't know what it means though. And I think there's something about strength. If you have a negative association with the word strength, it cuts you off from something happening in your body. I don't want to waste my strength by going against somebody because it's not going to work. But there is a kind of strength, which is, you might call determination in the muscles that does something. I was talking to a Tai Chi teacher the other day, and he said that the term he uses for it is dignity. And I was 18 years into Aikido, and I hit this posture, and I felt there was dignity in my hip sockets. I didn't know what it meant, but it was the same word for some reason. So I think there's something going on that there is something going on. I'll go that far and stop.
Tesfaye uses the words to express posture. He calls it the dignity line.
Yes.
Which I'm stealing that one. That's just like, says so much.
Yeah, I'm going to steal that one too.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the German word Unterstützung. It means to support, but unter means under. So you don't actually have a sky hook, you have something underneath that's pushing the pelvis up. And that, I think, is intention or ki if you generate it that way.
Yeah. So, I mean, so those of us who, and I don't claim to be one, but maybe know a bit more about the body. So do muscles work well when they're better, maximize their ability to do things physically when they're relaxed or tense?
Neither, because you can't use a muscle except by tensing it. And most people don't make the distinction between tension, which means extra effort, and the tensing of the muscle that you need to move it all. But if you use extra effort, you're wasting it, you're stiffening things, interfering with the joints and the free flow of movement.
Sure.
But you can't do it without tension. If by tension you mean tensing.
Yeah, okay. So well, if you look at absolutely brilliant sportsmen in any sport, golf, tennis, basketball, Aikido, they all have this sort of fluidity and sense of more time and of being incredibly relaxed and using whatever they've got incredibly effectively, but seemingly without effort.
Particularly if they're winning, by the way. Can I just quickly say, Quentin, I mean, if you look at, since we're coming up to the Olympics, Olympic athletes, you know, the first thing you notice is that they're fantastic bodies and those muscle movements rippling through their bodies. But if you look at the winners, as their bodies strain to win, their face is very relaxed. Most people have got a smile on their face as they break through the winning barrier. Sorry, Jamie.
Yeah, I'd like to say hi, everybody. Yeah, just kind of connect some of these dots. You know, looking at Olympic athletes or a really great athlete, you're talking about fluidity and all of this. Relaxation partly comes from alignment. So if you think about when you're not aligned, and that means physically, you know, hips, shoulders, feet, etc., and your inner intention, your mind, body, spirit, heart, as Joanna was talking about. When you're aligned, harmony is a much more relaxed state. And so they're interrelated, alignment and now. I'm thinking about golf. The fundamentals of golf are called, I call them PGA. which is posture grip alignment, or LPGA, love your posture grip alignment, which means they're in harmony. Yeah, you feel comfortable, and feeling comfortable is that relaxation. So, but I want to add another A. So we have alignment, but I always say aim and alignment. So this is apropos of your question, Quentin, what are we aligned about or to or whatever? And we can think about it in the Aikido sense, but you can think about it, say in golf or in life. We have aims, we have targets, we have goals. And what's interesting to me is a lot of people are very into the goal, into the target, but they miss like this alignment, And so if you actually have yourself aligned, you're sort of going to your goal. I mean, it's implicit, actually, because you are aligning to something. So whatever that is, whatever your aim intention is, you align to it. Yeah. And then for me, I call it setting up for success. So, and when we're aligned, we're set upright. And this goes to use of muscles, use of force. So you can have a quote unquote softer power. I mean, when you're out of alignment, golfers are just a great example, but you can see in Aikido, if you're not aligned, then you're left to having to use your upper body and force and muscular force. But when you have center and inner alignment, body's aligned, that could be to our uke, it could be to whatever, our golf shot, hitting your serve in tennis. That's a specific thing you're trying to get to, and you have to align to it physically. And then the energy flows properly. And when energy is flowing from the ground up, and that means feet, hips, shoulders are aligned, and then, heart and mind, everything's aligned, and breath, things are easier, things are more relaxed, things flow. You have a softer power, you have a dynamic kind of tension, not just a tense tension, but the proper dynamic tension that generates extra power that you can really deliver with. So I think that's what we see in Aikido or seeing martial arts when we're talking about sort of the generic principles. And so I just wanted to offer that. There's like aim and alignment, and what does that mean? And then how we are using ourselves. I call that sort of, that's the Aiki thing that I call beneath the bottom line. Like, golfers know about posture grip alignment, but what's going into that posture grip alignment? And that's the level we go to, I think, in Aikido.
So if we look at most major sports, the ones that make it are ones that are really totally aligned with the aim of, I'm going to make it to the top. I will play professional football, or I will be a professional golfer. Unless they're heart, mind, and soul in that, they probably won't make it. But I'm interested in, I think you've hit on something really important. Let's take that into Aikido then. So we're saying that our aim is really important in Aikido. So what is your aim in Aikido? Individually, what is your aim? Offer me.
That's a great question, Quentin. And that's the whole question for Aikido's aim, is we're looking at, how do we renew Aikido? How do we take Aikido in the future? What's our aim, That's a great question.
Does some people like to offer some answers?
Hello, everybody. When you just said, what's your aim? And the word that popped in my head was, what's your intention? That to me is at the core of Aikido all the time, is intention. And, it's easy for someone to say, that they're, I study Aikido, I practice Aikido, I'm an Aikidoist. And in my head, I'm asking, what does that really mean to you, though? How do you interpret being an Aikidoist or Aikidoka? What does that mean? Because people do things for various reasons. And so what's your intention? What are you aiming to accomplish? Are you trying to resolve this in a peaceful way? Are you trying to just meet the attack? Are you trying to subdue somebody? What's your intention? What is the aim? And then it's about, how do you go about doing that? How do you go about accomplishing your goal? And so when we're talking about alignment, it's getting ready or preparing yourself for how you're going to do something. It's we always talk about a dance, the relationship between uke and nagi. What's the relationship? Are you looking to step on somebody's toes, or are you going to be the smooth operator? So that's what I think about when I say, what's your aim? What's your intention?
I think it's brilliant. And it's something that I will regularly say to my students. I will say, well, why are you here? What is your intention? Because until you know what your intention is, how can we build a plan to get you where you want to be? You know, it's impossible to build a road to nowhere. You need to know where you're trying to go.
Look at Trump.
Okay.
I'd like to chime in if I may.
Patrick, I was hoping you would.
So I've been doing like 22, 23 years Aikido. And of course, I don't have your level or Molly's or, you know, some of you have been doing a lot longer. But I've had 3 moments in those years where I've had those sensei moment levels. And those were my, like, when you hit that first time you hit your golf ball and you get a hole in one, it feels like that and you get addicted to it. Well, I want to do that again. But what I remember from those 3 moments was a tremendous inner feeling of peace within myself and with my partner and with the things all around me. So I keep striving. That's what keeps me in the game, that keeps me trying to come back. Because I'm pretty sure had I not had even one time that moment, I would have quit a long time ago, because I had a lot of, you know, everybody has their challenges up, you know, their bumps in the road and so on. But that's what keeps me coming back, that feeling of really, can't even put it into words, such tremendous peace in that moment. So that's all I wanted to say.
No, but that's brilliant, Patrick, because you now, having felt what felt like a perfect moment for you, you now know what you're striving to achieve. You know, and you can work out a path that might help you get there. And yes, you might change the path and you might amend it a bit as time goes on.
Yeah, the only problem was I didn't know what the heck happened to create it. So it's not been easy for me to recreate.
Maybe not, but you know that
most of the time it's just struggle.
You know.
Can I say something about that?
Yes, please do.
Well, you know, I think we have sort of a roadmap in Aikido, right? And, you know, we get centered, we get grounded, we get integrated, we relax, we're aligned, you know, we do all these things. So those are the, to me, they're like these, you know, universal principles. I call mechanics for the magic. And I think they really help. That's the roadmap, so we could get there more often, or it's like somewhat in our control. We have input into it. On the other hand, I think there's also something that happens. I've experienced it in Aikido. I've seen it in golf. So for example, there's a young woman, she's like actually the only young Black woman on the LPGA tour, Mariah Stackhouse. She's in her mid-20s, but when she was a freshman at Stanford, she shot a 61. So if you know golf, that's like unbelievable score. And it's a record. It will stand for who knows how long. It's such an amazing record. So I asked her, I said, what happened? Like, how did you, you know, how were you prepared? And, you know, I mean, all those good things. And she said, you know what, I was late that day. I didn't even get to warm up. And I don't know how, you know, I just like, it just happened, you know. And there's a story like that of Rory McIlroy, who's like, you know, on top of PGA players. And he overslept, his alarm, and he had to like get in a cab and get raced over there. And he showed up. I mean, if you're a minute late for your time, you're disqualified. That's it. You have to be there. Your tee time. He shows up on the tee like 1 minute before, like, and he shot his best round. And he won the tournament. And so, you know, there's something to be said for all the preparation and everything. There's something to be said for, I mean, I think it doesn't come out of nowhere. You're prepared, right? That's why we practice. So we have these qualities internalized within us. And I think that's part of it, is we could draw on them like in an instant if we have to. If we have more time, that's cool. But we can drop into that place because we know what it is. We know what it feels like. We know what those qualities are. And then there's room for, you know, magic to happen. Yeah, I mean, I just think about a hole-in-one I had here in Arizona. I'm on my first trip since COVID and vaccination. So, but anyways, we're going to a course where I had a hole-in-one a couple of years ago. And I mean, it was, I was like, wow, how'd that happen? You know, I hit this like just perfect shot. And I was nervous on that shot because the person who hit before me hit it to about 8 feet from the pin, and she was an amateur and I'm a pro and I'm supposed to do better. And I was like, God, how am I going to top that? And I knocked it in the hole. I mean, it was like a miracle. So I don't know. I just want to say that there's also room for this other stuff to happen, but I think it's based on us having a consciousness of these qualities and internalizing that. To me, that's what our training's for, so that it's in us.
Funnily enough, my best round of golf ever, when I was playing my brother-in-law, and we had to complete about 18 holes in about 2 hours, and I thought we were going to finish at 9. But I was playing so well, I was literally running to the next ball and hitting and running and hitting, and everything was working that day. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to go back to what Patrick was saying about that not being able to recreate. As I talk to students about that, and I tell them, I say, you know you're really doing it when you don't feel anything. Like that just happened. And if you think about it, you've lost it. You know, it is an absence of feeling. It's just emotion. You know, you've done a movement and everything flowed and came together, not because you tried to put it together, but just because it was there. And so I always connect that to no mind, you know, having no mind. You know, you're at peace inside and you just move. And so I don't think, Patrick, if you ever think about how to redo it, you know you've lost it. That's it.
Yeah, I would say that I would totally agree with that. You have to bank those experiences because you will never knowingly repeat them, that they just happen. So you have to just bank them and keep them there.
Yeah. Errol, you've been very quiet. Would you like to offer anything?
I've just been thinking about when you're all things you've been saying about alignment. To me, I learned Aikido through Akemi. I learned all my alignment from Akemi, being aligned with the ground, being aligned with the person who was throwing me. And that's how I learned my Aikido, from Akemi, and that's all from experience. The other thing was that I have very bad eyesight. So when somebody's explaining something, I never saw their fingers, I never saw what they were holding. The only experience I got with the actual technique was when I was being thrown. So for me, when you talk about alignment, I always think of it from the side of uke.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great point, because we all tend to think of Aikido from the point of doing the throw, but actually you learn probably more from taking good Ukemi. And you know, there is as a teacher, when I'm trying to work out what's going wrong, it's from taking Ukemi that I know exactly what's gone wrong, because you feel the point, you know exactly what's gone wrong, at which point it is and what they did. So that sort of aligning your senses to your partner and following truly is absolutely key. I agree.
And also, Akemi is also done without thinking. You're not thinking in Akemi, it's reactive, and that goes deeper than your intellect when you're thinking about doing a technique as Naga. And for me, it goes deeper when you're doing proper Akemi, because you're completely not thinking. It's your body's just, you're letting your body work its own way to find its own alignment.
Yeah, I would say there's far less temptation to think. I still think it's probably possible, but it is more reactive. I agree. Yeah. So, Rob, is this the moment where you come in with those profound words that I was asking for?
Well, I was going to comment on, I mean, as much as, I mean, I sort of started off talking about the axis mundi and aligning with, you know, for balance purposes with gravity effectively, but the, and, you know, getting your body aligned with itself. But of course, there's also the very critical, you know, thing about aligning with your partner center, right? And like they've grabbed my wrist and my return sort of pushed back. If it's off their center, I'm not, you know, I'm having a very different and much less desirable effect than if I'm right, you know, and my energy is going right at their target. I mean, I then won't, unless I'm trying to just push them back, I'm not going to just keep pushing at that, but I need to know exactly where that center is and be responsive to it in ways that are, you know, obviously critical to the effectiveness of technique. Yeah. In my head, the sort of work that Hiroshi Ikeda often does, where movements have gotten so tiny that they're not even, you know, necessarily movements that you call movements. There's just sort of like this idea that you're hooking behind their center and going off a little bit to the left, you know, and it's funny for me to have seen him, you know, 20, you know, in like 25-year increments, where in the early 90s, and I introduce him and he talks about how circles, went from, big to small, and his wrist is at least still turning, right? And then 20 years later, people are grabbing his wrist and falling down, and you don't see a thing, but when you grab his wrist, it's there. It's not, this is not this is not a fake show. It's just that it's gotten to the point where the physicality of it is practically invisible. But it is absolutely about alignment with partner.
Yeah. It's also about intention. It's also very much about the intention of what you're doing as well.
I think intention is a very slippery idea. I was once talking to Mary Honey, and she asked, what do you think fundamentally in the simplest way Aikido is? I said, Aikido is a way of removing free will from another conscious being and forcing them to do what you want. She was aghast. And I said, well, I'm not going to let him hurt me or hurt him. I'm going to gently control him and take him into therapy. She said, oh, that's the same thing you just said, but differently. Sounds different, doesn't it?
Yes, but we wouldn't expect anything any different, Paul.
Of course not. Or maybe you would.
Do ethics play any part in alignment?
Yes, because if you're hateful, you can't, your body is distorted. There's no flow from bone to bone to bone to ground.
Do you want to expand on that a bit?
No. If you can you hate somebody? Hate my jokes, for example, or something better. When you hate,
I've got somebody in mind.
And what do you do in your body when you hate? You can't. I don't think you can have a free, open, kind structure when you're possessed by hate.
Yeah, there's a block. There's a little bit of a block when I feel that. Yeah.
I think Aikido is here to show us that if you want to throw the guy down, you have to be kind and loving and balanced, aligned. That puts everything in a different perspective.
Okay, so then let's expand a little bit on what the ethics of Aikido are then. What are the ethics of Aikido as far as you guys and girls are concerned? What do you want? Joe, yes, go for it, girl.
I don't know if it has to do with that, but today I sent that quote of Bo Sensei to one of my students. And first of all, I told her that harmony brings forth to love, and love brings forth to joy, and joy is the greatest treasure. But actually, it is the other. It's another sequence. It's love brings forth harmony. Harmony brings forth joy. So if I want harmony with somebody and then I hate somebody, I'll never get the harmony over that. So I really need to release my heart to come with the love feeling, then to open to harmony. And when I stopped that, and then when I read again, I said, yeah, okay, it's other thing. I need to, I don't know, dissolve the hate. Actually, that's part of the job. So if I'm really angry at somebody today, or somebody really pissed me off, how am I going to transform this into a love feeling that I can, okay, let me figure out what that happens. Then I can harmonize. If I don't open my heart, I would just go, yeah, okay, you're good. And my heart is like a rock.
Let me take it to an extreme then. What does Aikido say about dealing with people like Hitler?
Sorry, can you speak?
What can Aikido teach us about dealing with people like Hitler?
There was the Hitler Youth slogan is Kraft durch Freude, means strength through joy. It's a brilliant slogan. They fucked it up big time, but that's what Aikido teaches.
Right. So, Rob, did you want to come in there? You've got to unmute, though.
I was actually waving to someone behind Molly, but if you would you kill Hitler, as a baby or something question is a thing in philosophy. I think the problem with a question about Hitler is that it decontextualizes all the opportunities that were there beforehand. you know, and all the Hitler is in effect the result of a long sequence of missteps and missed opportunities to put a stop to that kind of thinking, that kind of, well, fascism. And America's recent experience with someone who would clearly have happily been, in a dictatorial role.
Mention no names, eh?
And the system worked well enough to, depose him. Thankfully, there was all sorts of things, historically that could have been done that would have made Hitler just a crank, a right-wing crank. Heck, if he had gotten into art school or whatever. But I think that it is inculcating the compassionate attitudes of Aikido. I mean, they are almost by definition healing, and people like Hitler are almost by definition wounded. And I think our role, we who are aware of Aikido's potential, are simply responsible for having all of our interactions with whomever they may be positive ones, be healing ones, be compassionate ones. And the more people are doing that, the less likely is someone wounded enough to find Hitler attractive in the first place. Right?
So,
I don't understand how one could be a Trump voter without being wounded.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and so, I'm okay with there being right-wing cranks. The much more disturbing thing as a US citizen was that there were that many people willing to vote for someone who was clearly a right-wing crank. So there were, 70 million people who need healing.
Yeah, we've got a big job, haven't we, guys and girls? Big job.
Yes.
We've got a long way to go.
I mean, Quentin, I think that's the key point about your aim of Aikido, because I think, if we're asked the question on the spot, like you asked it, many of the answers are going to be about self, the search for self-knowledge. But actually, the really big one is, how do we help 70 million people?
What you're saying, starts with self. It's like, I think when we talk about extending energy. So, what energy you extend? You're extending your own energy. And this is where we start with inside of us. Or as Paul was saying, hate isn't an energy that's like, isn't going so well in our bodies, right? But it's like, what's going on in here that then we extend out, and then that gets, and does what's going, are we able to cultivate who we want to be? What's our own personal aim inside in our own growth and training? And then how do we extend that out? And are we doing that in an effective way so that what gets communicated out there and what makes the impact, is what we want. And I mean, golf's kind of funny. We talk about killing the ball. Yeah. And, the minute you want to kill it, it's like a terrible shot. And people always said, I try to kill it. But I mean, we just have that instinct in us. Yeah. I mean, it just happens. You want to kill it, or we react to someone. And that's the part I think we're working on all the time. We're polishing that part, and also finding out that part of it is it doesn't really work so well. It doesn't really get us where we want to go. It doesn't achieve the results that we might really want to achieve.
I think a topical subject Quentin, may be, in terms of specifying an aim, is to, in these COVID times, is to have an R rate greater than 1. But what I mean by that is, I quite like doing, I've done it a few times, teaching, trying to explain Aikido to a class of school kids who've never seen it or done it before. And I know I'm never going to meet them again, and probably not have any communication with their teachers either. But I just go in hoping I can influence one person secretly just to give it a go. So that's an R rate of 1. Now, you guys, Jamie and Paul, you guys have already got R rates of 10 and more. But I think that's a key thing, is just to quietly try and influence somebody positively to take it forward, and then it can blossom.
So I was going to say, I think, so we've all got a responsibility to follow those aims through on ourselves. And we then have a wider responsibility to those that we love around us, and then those that we don't love around us. Hopefully in the end, we love everybody, to take those values out into the world and make a difference. And we all are capable of doing that. And if we don't play our part.
I agree with that, Quentin. I had in my early years of Aikido, I didn't, of course, I thought I knew something, didn't know anything, of course. And I was interacting with, it was at a seminar with this guy who was really big and quite strong. And I was just being myself and and later, so I had no idea that I even had some kind of impact on him until he came up to me later and he said, "You were one of the softest I ever felt." And that made me start thinking I'm really hard. So I just thought,
Well, yeah, really nice.
Nice to sign off. I just want to say thank you to everybody. This is awesome as always.
To see you. Thank
Much
you.
love. Okay, thank you.
I was going to say that actually one of the beautiful things that have come out of doing this session is when you get people who never shown up on these sessions. I had one this week, but they connected with me and said, these sessions are brilliant. They really helped me throughout this time and really helped me develop my Aikido. So of course that's what I wanted, but you have no idea what impact these sessions have other than the people that are here. They keep showing up. So I guess it is some sort of use for us all. But when those strangers that you've never touched directly are affected, wow, that's kind of really powerful, quite emotional, really.
Yeah. Can I just share something with you? So back in the early 70s, I went to university at Durham. I was only a brown belt Aikido at the time, but there was no Aikido anywhere near. So I joined in with the judo club, and one of the people in the halls with me was doing judo, and we practiced together, and occasionally we did a little bit of Aikido. Years later, one of my own students, this is about 5 years ago, he was going to Durham University, and he asked me if I knew any Aikido clubs up in that area. I didn't. I researched, and I found this chap that I'd been at university with is now running an Aikido club in Durham. So you just don't know what effects you are having.
Yeah, lovely, beautiful. Okay, I'm just going to open it up for any final comments or thoughts, because it's been Linda.
Quentin, I had one about a thought about the ethics of Aikido that came to me as I forget who brought it up, healing and being healing and or versus wounding. I think one of the central ethics, energies, whatever, of Aikido is inclusion, and it works on a very immediate physical level. We join with our partner. We receive them. It's not about blocking and pushing away and denying them, but we're very receptive. But also on the bigger level, our idea is not to make them separate or other, but to bring people in. And it works on the community level. We tend to be a very accepting community, very supportive. But I see that like in all the levels through Aikido, is that inclusivity, non-separate sort of idea.
Yeah, no, really nicely said. And it's one of my aims, to be very inclusive, and whoever turns up on my mat is welcomed, whatever they bring. Yeah, and
that's one of my goals in all of my that spanned all of my work as either a designer, documentation person, fitness coach, whatever, is to bring people in. So much of it seems to be like, well, you know, you're not smart enough to learn about this, or, you know, that sort of attitude in a lot of the world. And I try to include, to empower people to participate.
Wonderful.
I think there's a very simple way to say it. The philosophy class joke is all of ethics can be broken down to this event, or this event, and we want to make people feel,
Can't think of a better way to finish the session really than that. That's good. You know, I just want to say that this is such a rich group. It's wonderful. So thanks for sharing. A wonderful week. I love having the stars, but you are all stars in your own right. So thank you. I will love and leave you. Have a really great week. And next week is our kind of more relaxed get together where we just share, be social, bring along a glass of wine or whatever is your tipple, and you know, maybe reflect on what the last year has brought from these sessions. Maybe you can look back on the sessions we've had and pick some of the things that you've taken from them and offer them to the group. What really touched you?
and don't forget that Quentin touched all of us. He's not mentioning it.
Okay, have a fab week, and I love and leave you for now.
All right, thank you all very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Quentin.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everyone.